good-paying jobs.
Not only did every Republican vote no, but on the House floor, several Republicans called climate science a hoax, even as Americans are suffering amid one of the hottest summers in U.S. history. Last month set a new record for the hottest overnight temperatures on average, which are linked to an increase in heat deaths. And a new survey finds nearly 40% of U.S. farmers are plowing under their own crops and selling off cattle because of extreme drought. The bill also contains $5 billion in new funding for drought mitigation in southwestern states. Federal water managers this week announced a new round of mandatory water cuts for the 7 states that rely on the Colorado River because water levels are plummeting due to the historic mega drought in the U.S. West. The urgent action protects 2 major dams from structural damage after states failed to reach an agreement among themselves. Starting in January, Arizona will lose 1/5 of its river allocation. Nevada, 8%. Mexico, 7%. California won't see cuts until the next phase of the drought response. The feds will implement other actions to shore up supplies in the new system while a new agreement is negotiated.
So this agreement has been in place for years, but this is the first time it's actually had to be triggered?
Yes. Arizona and Nevada water agencies are not happy about the cuts, and they are demanding that other states, California, do more to preserve the river.
Hey, it's our water. We got there first.
Speaking of falling water levels, a 5th set of human remains has been found in the rapidly declining Lake Mead Reservoir near Las Vegas.
A 5th set of remains?
Yes, even while Vegas is experiencing its wettest monsoon season in years that is flooding streets and casinos.
So that ought to fill up Lake Mead a little bit, no?
Not even close.
Oh.
In California, Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed sweeping new measures to increase the state's water supply amid the mega drought.
We're going to steal more water from the Colorado?
The $8 billion plan calls for upgrading the state's entire water system to increase efficiency with new infrastructure for water storage and stormwater capture, groundwater management, increased recycling and reuse, and desalination plants.
There's plenty of water that flows through that just flows right out that we can reuse, that is high quality, safe, and affordable. And so it's, again, about just being a little bit more resourceful and provide us more capacity to balance the needs as an ag state so that we're not going at each other, urban versus ag.
I don't know. Dick Cheney said you can't conserve your way out of a crisis.
Finally, some great news. In Massachusetts, Republican Governor Charlie Baker signed a sweeping climate and energy bill into law with major provisions to boost offshore wind energy, decarbonize Boston's transit system, allow cities to ban fossil fuel appliances in new buildings, and require all new cars sold in Massachusetts to be zero emissions by 2035.
Well, that's that. I guess Charlie Baker is going to have to be thrown out of the Republican Party. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
It's time for the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here. Today on the big program, we come to you from the Three Rivers City, the Iron City, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Netroots Nation. I think this is the 17th Netroots. I think we've been to 7 or 8 of them over the years. This one kind of special, I think, coming out of the pandemic. An opportunity for folks to finally get back together and do things that, well, we haven't done in a fairly long time. The idea that, we need to, I don't know, be around each other again seems like a good idea. Happy about it. Spent a good portion of the day meeting people and seeing folks I haven't seen in quite some time. And again, when you catch back up and you reminisce of the past, you start thinking about, hey, how are we going to improve and move forward in the future? And that's kind of what the conversations here have been about. So far, what we've been talking about is, come November, how are we going to reshape the future of the country and move forward? A lot of positive. And this is where I think the difference, a huge difference from the right and the left. Here you have optimism moving forward, especially, look, some huge victories coming out of the administration. This Inflation Reduction Act seems to be on everyone's mind. Massive victories out of that. And look, as I've been saying, big win. Take the win, be happy with the win, celebrate the win, and then, that's right, organize so you begin to move the ball further. And I'm thrilled to hear everyone we talked to said the same thing. Wasn't enough, and we're going to wake up tomorrow and we're going to fight to make it enough the next day. That's what has to happen. Now, I look at this group, the folks that have come together, and probably the smallest number of folks that I've seen at Netroots. But again, coming out of the pandemic, a lot of folks staying virtual. So from what I'm told, half of the attendees will be virtual. Kind of, I guess, got used to it over the last couple of years. But it is all about the organizing and all about the coming together. Now, over the next couple of days, we're going to be talking with activists and organizers and folks who are doing the groundwork today on the program. Alex Lawson's going to be here to share some thoughts about, well, the Inflation Reduction Act, Social Security, the attacks there. He's the executive director of Social Security Works. And we've just got a huge lineup today of folks that we grabbed while we're going to be grabbing while sitting here in the hall on Radio Row. Want to hear your thoughts? Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Because coming out of this, and what I'm going to be paying attention to, especially as you look at some of these breakout sessions on how to organize and how to rebuild your community and local, hyper local. And as I've said for years, you want to change the world, you start by changing your little part of it. And that seems to be kind of a theme. In fact, as we were talking to some of the folks in the exhibit hall, a lot of digital organizers, a lot of people selling web applications on how to do what used to be old school knocking on doors, now being done virtually, that you can change other people's neighborhoods. And I like the enthusiasm. I like the possibilities. Still kind of an old school knock on the door, talk to somebody face to face, but we'll talk to some of those folks as well. I'm looking forward to some of the keynote speakers. Randy Weingarten's going to be here. We're going to get her on the show as well. Our good friend Sarah Nelson's going to swing by at some point. There is a lot here. If you want to check out the work that they do, netroots.org is their website. And we'll get some links out on how you can take a look at the work that they do here at Netroots. Netrootsnation.org, the website. There's a way to sign up virtually so that hey, you can look at some of the stuff that's going on and participate a little bit. The one thing that I've been surprised about is now it's early in this conference. Not a lot of talk about Trump. Not a lot of talk about the former guy. Everything seems to be, how do we pick up the ball and how do we move forward? Not a lot of focus on the past. And I'm really optimistic about that and hyper focused about this election cycle. And the enthusiasm that may not have been there 6 months ago, may not have been there 4 months ago. Most certainly there now, because like I said, we've seen some massive wins racked up by this administration, even groups that would generally attack President Biden, giving him the credit for doing the hard work. And as I said before, we spent 4 years of a guy who was all talk and no action. We've had 2 years of a guy who's been all action, no talk. I think I would prefer the all action guy, because some of the stuff that's been getting done, really, really good stuff. So over the next couple of days, not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Orange Menace and the raid on the Golden Palace. Not going to spend a lot of time looking at the Weisselberg plea and that stuff. Not going to do an awful lot on that front, but we are going to spend some time on how we're going to reshape the future, the pathway forward, and some of the things that I'm hoping to get more on. Maybe talking about, hey, how do we change our electoral system to maybe start talking about how we have the person with the most votes win an election? Wouldn't that be something special? I think it would be, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm going to take a quick break here at Netroots Nation from Pittsburgh. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to Netroots Nation here in Pittsburgh. One of the things I love about coming to these, you run into people that you've had on the show, you've met virtually, you talked on the phone, you do the Zoom thing, but never met in person. That's why I'm thrilled to talk to my next guest, Carolyn Fiddler. You may remember her last week. We had her on talking about the elections and, well, Alaska and the other place as well, Wyoming, and the bloodbath that happened there. But you may remember Carolyn is the political editorial director over at Courier Newsroom, couriernewsroom.com, one of the sponsors of Netroots Nation. Carolyn, thanks for taking time for us.
I am so delighted to be here and to meet you in person. It's very cool.
Yeah, very, very cool. Because I've been doing this stuff for years, and you meet people virtually over the phone, and you're getting to actually, especially post-pandemic, actually getting to shake hands, say hello. I think pretty good.
I agree. I like people. What can I say?
There you go. That makes all of one of us. So as a sponsor, why?
Because Netroots Nation is an important sort of legacy organization. They started with Daily Kos. It was originally the yearly Kos conference, and it spun out into its own jam. And now it's the biggest conference and gathering of progressives in the country. And it's really nice to be able to do it in person. It was virtual the last couple of years. It's just not the same. But it brings a lot of organizers and activists and even industry people together to help people work together better and have better tech and resources and to build relationships.
Yeah.
Like, I've already met a lot of cool people here.
No, and this is what the right has done masterfully for decades. You have all these crazy conferences, and you think of Crazy Pack, where at one point was really about ideas and really about conservatism, and you could argue whether that was a good thing for the country or not. They've really jumped the shark into insanity, as a lot of the young Nazi rallies and now the old Nazi rallies. In fact, you're tomorrow going to be a Nazi rally.
There is.
Which is kind of exciting. But
exciting is one word for it, yes.
So, This is the first time Courier News is sponsored this event,
Yes,
right?
yes, it is. I've been coming to Netroots for a very long time.
Yeah, that's where I was going.
Yeah. It's the first time Courier has sponsored it, and we're very excited to have an important presence here. It's a great organization to support. And Courier Newsroom is kind of new, so it's really good to get our name out there and to make connections in the progressive movement, because what Courier does is so important in terms of fighting misinformation with good information. So very excited to be here. But Netroots is just, it's fun to see it evolve over the years. It's fun to get back in touch with people I haven't seen since like 2019. I've been here with other organizations I worked for over the years, the Democratic Legislative Campaign Committee. It's good to go and connect and get the importance of state legislative races out there and talked about. I used to work with AFT, and they're always a big sponsor here. And I was actually with Daily Kos for a number of years, the originator of Netroots, always come in as a big sponsor. And it's important to support this work. So really happy to be here again.
Yeah, no, so let's talk about the legislative races, and let's talk about the I guess we got to start with Wyoming. Let's go
We don't
there.
have to, but we can.
Well, yeah, I think you kind of do. I mean, it was a thumping.
It was a bloodbath.
Yeah, she got whacked. I mean that really is. I think the moment that you realize the Republican Party is no longer. I mean, maybe the logo's still there, but they're the death cult.
Yeah. I confess I was surprised by the margin and disappointed. Like, I knew she was going to lose. Everyone knew she was going to lose, but that margin was just, it was a lot and really, really depressing in terms of what it says about Republicans. And some people say that this is only a Wyoming thing, but I think it absolutely has national implications.
Yeah, I do too. Now, look, I don't want to at all, at any level, say Liz Cheney is a good person or somebody that I would vote for, because I wouldn't have. I mean, legislatively, she was a monster.
Correct.
And I said that from the very beginning. She did the right thing in the moment, and I give her credit for that, because it did cost her in this moment her position. But I do think it's going to catapult her down the road, and I think that's the calculus as well.
Oh, absolutely. She is incredibly smart. She comes from a family of calculating operatives, so she gets it honest.
That's such a nice way of putting that.
And to my knowledge, she has not shot anyone in the face.
And made them apologize for it.
I know. It's classic abuse nonsense there. Anyway. But no, I agree. She has her sights set on other bigger things. But yeah, the Republican Party is, well, it's not even undergoing a reckoning. Like, the party has fully embraced this extremism that she stands against. And it is kind of sad. I'm not sad for her, because I agree with you, she is a monster legislatively. But it's sad to see someone who stands up for principles and does the right thing lose because of it.
And badly to someone who was bad.
Yes. Yeah, she is, yeah. Somehow worse legislatively, but also way out there.
And this is where I keep coming back to. People go, can you reach out to the Republicans? And is there any bit of because look, I'm planning on going to the Nazi rally here. For folks who don't know, I keep responding. I keep saying the Nazi rally tomorrow. That is Ron DeSantis is coming to Pittsburgh to have a rally with Benito Mastriano. I mean, Senator Doug Mastriano, who was running for governor here in this state. I think that's going to be a full-blown Nazi rally, because this area has a white supremacist large movement. So I'm expecting that. And I think this site chosen specifically because Netroots is here. Because I can't think of any other reason why you would choose Friday at the same location that this is going on. It seems convenient.
Yeah, it's a little sus.
It seems like you want some kind of chaos, some kind of attention.
Yeah.
Maybe
trying to sow conflict.
Trying to get a little attention since he's not really doing well. I mean, the campaign.
Not really.
Not going well. Kind of like the Oz campaign. Not going well. When you don't know how many houses you own or can't remember your children's names or what store you're in.
Legitimately? Also, do you own houses illegitimately? So many questions about that whole thing.
This is the best and brightest the GOP has to offer.
Yeah, no, I...
So I look at what you do over at Courier News. This is fertile ground.
Yes, extremely. I mean, we have a property here. We have a newsroom here in Pennsylvania called Keystone. And obviously doing a very important work in this election cycle, because Mastriano is terrifying. Like, having him in charge of the state is just going to be a nightmare if he wins, especially with a GOP-controlled legislature. Democrats could flip the House this year. It is a tall order. The maps are better, but flipping the House may well be a multi-cycle prospect. So with the GOP legislature and Mastriano as governor, like all kinds of chaos can be wrought. And
No, I keep telling my union buddies, I go, the first thing that'll happen, and Kentucky will get whiplash at how fast Pennsylvania becomes a right-to-work state.
yes, fact.
And that will be a horrible thing for the Commonwealth, and something that will take decades, I think, to undo.
Absolutely. Agreed.
And then with that comes then cutting school funding, all the health and human services, painful cuts to people with disabilities. You go down the list.
Yeah.
But the corporate America will be happy.
Of course, of course. And of course, one of the things that Republicans don't talk about when they start moving towards so-called right to work is that they're targeting unions, because unions are a key part of the infrastructure of the progressive movement in the Democratic Party. And they know by kneecapping unions, they're kneecapping the party and making it easier for themselves to hold on to power. It's diabolical on multiple levels.
And the other part of it, and I go even further than that it's more than just about Democrats. It's about they don't want people believing collective action works. They want to continue that hyper-individualism of the Reagan era,
Yeah.
that you alone can do it, that kind of Trumpian kind of one person, I can alone can do this.
Right, bootstraps.
And as long as you can keep people divided and pitted against each other, it's easier to fleece them.
Fact.
And,
Absolutely true.
and boy, it's been Grifter's Super Bowl ever since the raid of the Golden Palace.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Yeah. I worry that we're going to see more attacks on federal employees. Like the guy who tried to shoot up the building in Ohio last week, was it?
In Cincinnati. And this is one of those moments where you go, the internet, social media, great thing. I like it. Maybe we don't know how to use it. Evidently, he went on social media on YouTube to find some videos on how to get through bulletproof glass with a nail gun, and then surprised it didn't work.
YouTube full of lies? Never. That's crazy.
But it worked in the video. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Carolyn Fiddler, political editorial director at Courier Newsroom, one of the sponsors here at Netroots Nation, couriernewsroom.com, the website if you want to check out the incredible work that they do there. So what are we hoping for out of this? What are we expecting over the next couple of days? I know you've been to a bunch of these, as have I. What are you expecting?
Well, I'm on a couple of panels myself, so I'm looking forward this afternoon to talking about I'll be talking about what happened in Virginia last year in the governor's race, how all that went a little awry for Democrats, and now we have Governor Youngkin, who is traveling to Michigan to, burnish his national credentials. Never mind that he has a whole state to govern already. And Senator Jennifer McClellan, who ran in the primary against Terry, is going to be on that panel. So a lot of tea is going to get spilled. Very exciting. And then on Saturday, I am moderating a panel about misinformation in the media and how to fight it, how conservative narratives make their way into mainstream media, how to fight back against it, and what the media's responsibility is to be pro-democracy as opposed to both sidesism.
Yeah, no, this is one of the things that drives me crazy because, I get people all the time that they get the talking points that they got on right-wing talk radio or on the F channel or one of the worst, the other ones, and somehow that they believe that that's actually news. And you go, no, that's propaganda. And, trying to explain how the right has built this incredible machine, and you have to give credit where credit is due.
Oh, yeah, they're clever as heck.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Goebbels would be like, oh, wow, I should have thought of that.
I know, right? Oh.
Think tanks, focus groups, right into the radio people, right into cable news, really? Right into the veins of democracy? Really? Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's quite impressive what they do, and I think most people don't quite get it, and I've been trying to explain this for years because I almost remember the first when I learned how this works. I had a friend who worked for one of the big right-wing radio voices, and once I found out that the program that he worked for was on the third floor of the Heritage Foundation,
Yep.
and how it was basically just this symbiotic relationship of here's your talking points and basically how the work is done for them. It was really kind of eye-opening at how the whole machine works.
It's very streamlined. They got real good at it, and Democrats are finally starting to catch up.
Are they?
My organization is one of the things that's part of the catch-up.
Okay.
Putting out good information to counter all the bad. We're very social media forward because that's where a lot of people get their news these days. They just see a headline, they're like, then that's it. They don't pay to get behind paywalls. And who can blame them? People are just trying to live their lives and spend their money on, things that benefit them directly, like food and gas and clothes for their kids as we're going back to school. So we put it out there. It's free. It's factual. But it's through a progressive lens and through a very pro-democracy lens. I think media has a responsibility to stand up for democracy more than it's doing. This both sidesism is hurting everybody.
Oh, you mean we don't have to give the Nazis a voice?
No, we don't. No, we absolutely do not.
And from the Nazis' perspective. See, now, if they did that, I would be okay with it. But they always couch it in different terms.
Right. Critics say.
Yeah. And this is where the left never fought those fights. I remember I would go, to different, issues at the state capitol here in Pennsylvania because I'm an activist and I've done a bunch of this stuff over the years. And you'd have, hundreds of people show up, for this certain rally, whatever it's going to be. And you'd have two guys from a right-wing think tank. And the news media would give both sides equal time.
Right.
And you go, what happened here? There's no fairness doctrine anymore. And you don't ever do that on the other side. Oh, that's right, because the left never shows up for that stuff.
Yeah. And one of the things the right did very successfully back, I guess, the 90s was convince media that it had a left-wing bias, which has never been true.
Right.
But they convinced the media that they were the problem. And so the media was like, oh, no, we have to do conservative things now, and we're all suffering because of it.
Yeah, you just got to keep making those accusations.
Yeah.
When it's actually a corporate-controlled media.
Exactly.
It's all about the money. Mm-hmm. And that's what we should be focusing on. But it's really great to see you and finally sit down in person.
Likewise.
I love having you on. I hope you enjoy your time here at the Big Net Roots.
Thank you.
I look forward to having you back again at some point in the near future.
Same. Thanks.
As always, great stuff. Carolyn Fiddler, the political editorial director there at Courier Newsroom. Make sure you check out their work at couriernewsroom.com. We'll get links out on social media. You can check a look at that. Gonna take a quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Keeping the chambers of commerce within their gated communities. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1902. That was the day more than 100 trade union delegates representing thousands of working people in St. Paul, Minnesota, elected Charles James to be the president of the city's Trades and Labor Assembly. Virtually forgotten by history, James is considered to be the first African American elected to a city labor council anywhere in America. He was born in 1866 in St. Paul and began working as a leather cutter for local shoe manufacturers at age 15. This was at a time when most African Americans were excluded from skilled trades. His biographer Dave Riley asserts that it is unclear when James became involved in union politics and organizing. Shoemaking was the largest mass production industry in St. Paul, employing thousands. Riley notes that the Knights of Labor had been active in the city during the 1880s, and shoe workers were among the first to organize. By 1899, James had become the first president of a newly formed shoe workers union in Minneapolis, and helped to found 3 more locals in St. Paul. By 1902, James was well known and well respected throughout the Twin Cities as a strong union leader. He served 3 terms as president of the Trades Assembly and then as secretary for 7 more years. Riley states that James continued as a full-time organizer and district business agent, traveling to cities across the Midwest to organize shoe workers. When he died in 1923, the Boot and Shoe Workers Union eulogized him in their national journal. Though James had been obscured from local labor history for decades, Riley and others have worked to write Charles James back into the history books. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Senator Joe Manchin, a one-man political steamroller in Washington, is a Democrat, except when he's not, which is most of the time. A multimillionaire West Virginia coal executive, he's the darling of fossil fuel and pipeline lobbyists and beloved by Republican opponents of progressive Democratic policies. Indeed, he's funded by Republican billionaires. But Washington lobbyists and billionaires are not the only source of personal political power that allows him to hold office and block little d Democratic policies that the American majority wants and needs. Back home, Joe has maintained tight authoritarian grip on West Virginia's Democratic Party structure, rigging the rules to put little Joes in each and every party position. In turn, this has long given Boss Manchin control over who gets to run as Democrats for down-ballot elected offices in the Mountain State. Until June 18, that is. That's when a statewide Democratic rebellion that had been organizing for 6 years elected its slate of over 50 candidates to oust the Manchinites on the party executive committee, replacing all but one of the top party officials with grassroots activists. It truly was a diverse, people-run victory. Selena Vickers, a social worker, was chief strategist, and Mike Pushkin, a cab driver, is now the party chair. Danielle Walker, now vice chair of the committee and the first person of color in state history to sit on the party's governing body, summed up the significance of this turnaround. There's a new beacon of light shining down on the government with people energized and ready to strategize with a return to the democratic process. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help bring this kind of progressive reform to your local or state Democratic Party, go to Our Revolution, the one national group working on this fundamental democratic change to the Democratic Party. OurRevolution.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to Netroots Nation here in Pittsburgh. Couple thousand people coming together to talk about how we changed the world. Well, at least take back a portion of it. And this electoral cycle, and I keep coming back to why elections have consequences. The big Nazi rally coming up. Can't wait for the Nazi rally on Friday as Ron DeSantis is coming to Pittsburgh to meet with the thumb Doug Mastriano, the senator here from Pennsylvania. And again, I'm hoping nobody shows up. This is one of those moments where I'm hoping nobody bothers. I'm still vacillating whether I'm going to show up or not. But one of the great things I love coming to conferences like this is you get to run into people that you maybe haven't seen in a while, some groups that you haven't talked about in a while. And one of those groups, Democracy for America, one of my favorite groups out there. That's why I've asked Chris Scott to come sit down with us. He's the Chief Political Officer for DFA. Chris, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks so much for having me on today.
So welcome to Netroots. Is this your first time at one of these?
This is my actual first time in person.
Yeah, these are incredible. This is probably, I think, the seventh or eighth one of these I've been to, and they're awesome because you get to meet a whole bunch of people doing really incredible work, kind of like you guys are doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Really excited to be here for Netroots. We have about 4 members of our team here in total, so definitely looking forward to meeting with partners, talking about how we need to come together to finish strong this year in the midterms.
Because the good thing is, for all of at the beginning of the year, a lot of people were like, oh, it's going to be a bloodbath. The Democrats are going to get wiped out come November. I'm looking at the polling, and I'm going, I'm guardedly optimistic it's not going to be a bloodbath. I'm looking at places like Wisconsin. Mandela Barnes is polling ahead of Ron Johnson. I'm looking at my state of Pennsylvania, the possibility of, keeping the governor's mansion and picking up a Senate seat.
Well, you got to feel optimistic. Definitely when we look at Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes was one of the first candidates we endorsed for this midterm cycle. He's been a DFA'er since he first started running for office. So When you look at Mandela Barnes, when you look at Sherry Beasley in North Carolina, definitely when we're looking at Pennsylvania with, the possibilities with the governor in the U.S. Senate race, I think progressives definitely have a lot to be proud of. I think this has to be one of the deepest candidate pools that we've had in a while with who we're putting forward. But I think when you talk about that momentum and why people are starting to feel that optimism, you look at that vote that happened a few weeks ago in Kansas. I think that enthusiasm gap that people were worried about with Democrats is now starting to close. People are starting to wake up a little bit more, pay attention, and really realize what we have at stake this cycle.
I think people finally woke up to the reality that the Republicans, one, hate working people, and two, do want to take us back to the good old days of the 80s and 90s and not the 1980s and 90s.
Exactly. I think even looking at what happened with the Mar-a-Lago raid with Trump recently, I think Democrats in general, if you lean into the messaging of this is a Republican Party, this is not your grandfather's or grandma's Republican Party. This is one that is deeply rooted, that has been spewing out poisonous rhetoric, that has been damaging for our fabric of our democracy. And again, I think people are waking up. They're realizing that it wasn't enough just to vote Trump out, but there's still so much work to do if you actually want to have that America that we all said we wanted to turn the chapter back towards with the 2020 election.
And again, you come back to elections have consequences, and we're dealing with some of that mess, aren't we? And I think I'm hoping people are waking up and going, come November, let's not make that mistake.
Exactly.
And again, this is why, I look at how bad things are gerrymandered, which is why I still think Republicans are going to take the House. Hopefully not by the margins that were anticipated earlier in the year. But, I'm looking at what this president has done, and I know you guys have been critical of him over the last several months, but I got to tell you, any other administration would be thrilled to get the kind of things that they've been able to accomplish.
I think the hard part with Biden was there was so much promise initially that people were hoping for. You look at, yes, he's definitely had some successes between Build Back Better, but I think sometimes it comes down to how quickly he was responding. I think people wanted to see him be more proactive. He was a president that sold, I'm ready to meet this moment. So I think that's where you see part of the frustration so far. But you look at the past couple of weeks, I think he's starting to really get his feet under him with where people want to see him. And I think with that, you're starting to see both sides of the Democratic Party come together and be like, hey, at the end of the day, we have one job. We got to protect the House, and we got to save the Senate. And when I say save the Senate, we got to pick up 2 more seats to make sure unequivocally we can get done what we want to get done.
No, and look, the reality is I think that's possible. I look at, Val Demings, polling ahead of Rubio in Florida, picking up a Senate seat in Florida. Really? Yeah. You look at, the Republicans pulling money out of Pennsylvania, pulling money, I think, out of Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. It's almost like they're giving up in a lot of these places. Now, granted, here in Pennsylvania, we got Dr. Quack running in the Senate who doesn't know how many houses he owns or what store he's in. And I guess, according to him, he even forgets the names of his own children. So, again, I don't know that that's somebody you really want in the Senate. But, I'm looking at Georgia, and, Herschel Walker's still in it. So, I don't know.
Well, I think it's one of those things. They're looking across the board, and I think they're finding themselves even spread a little bit thin of where are we actually going to reinforce where we have the best chance. Again, you have a deep bench of candidates, I think, this year, particularly running for the Senate, probably one of the most qualified bunch that we've had in a while. And I think that's making them pause and really consolidate, hey, we can try to go for the Senate in the House, or we could try to probably focus a little bit more on the House and try to have a stalemate there. But I think even with the House, with that enthusiasm gap closing, I think they're going to have a hard time still being able to flip the House. I think you have a lot of good open opportunities this year, despite all the gerrymandering.
Yeah, I mean, the gerrymandering throws everything into their side of the field. I mean, you look at some of these areas, and it's just insane. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show. We're with Chris Scott. He's the Chief Political Officer for Democracy for America. DemocracyForAmerica.com, their website. We'll get links out on social media You can take a look at the great work that they do. I want to go back to the Biden thing for a minute. Because, look, I'm critical of Biden when he deserves it. But to be honest, a lot of this falls on the shoulders of Sinema and Manchin for slowing down these process. I got to tell you, he was not my first choice, wasn't my second, wasn't my third. But I think he's been killing it, given the realities of what he's had to deal with and all of the problems that the Democrats, Manchin and Sinema, and the others. I mean, you can go into Chris Coons and go into Warner and go into Kelly and a whole bunch of other ones. But I think given what he's gotten, I think he's done a fantastic job.
Well, I mean, it starts with how did this administration even start? You start out before he can even get into office having an insurrection in the first place. This has been an administration, I think, that has had more situations than most presidents have ever had to deal with, really even in their entire tenure. So for that, you definitely have to applaud him for his perseverance.
Now, I want them all to be more progressive, like this latest bill.
Absolutely.
We'll use the Inflation Reduction Act as a perfect example. Is it enough? No, but it's huge. It's a huge victory, and I know a lot of my progressive friends and my more liberal friends it's not enough, and they're brooding and pouting. No, this is a massive win. We take this victory. Tomorrow we wake up, we fight on it, and we expand on that.
Well, I think at the end of the day, you have to start somewhere. If he wasn't starting somewhere, if we weren't getting anything passed, we would be a lot more concerned with November coming up. So, again, is it as progressive as we want it to be? Absolutely not. We definitely know that he can go further. And, again, he can be more proactive at time. Right. But he has gotten things done to right the ship, seeing what he inherited in the first place. And I think he gave us some building blocks. And now it's up to us to carry it the rest of the way. And he just has to make sure, let's keep being proactive. Let's not be reactive. I
thought we were going to start arguing a little bit. I was kind of hoping for that a little bit. Because look, here's the reality. This is what Democrats do sometimes. They can't take wins. And then they end up eating each other, the circular firing squad. Whereas Republicans, they fall into line, and no matter how bad someone is, i.e. Trump, they're all in line. And this is one of those moments for me. I know a lot of Democrats aren't entirely thrilled with everything. This is a huge moment. I mean, we've got a massive infrastructure bill. Is it enough? No. The American Society for Civil Engineers says we need $4.8 trillion. We got 1.2. Huge start, not nearly enough. Same thing with the Baby Build Back Better or the Inflation Reduction Act or whatever stupid name they gave it. Not enough, but still a huge win.
Now, I think if you talked to me earlier this summer, I would have had a lot harsher hits. Again, I think he's coming around. The big thing I think all progressives want to see, are you going to come through with what you said you were going to do on student loan relief? I think that is the next big deadline. I think if he hits the ball how he's supposed to, I think it could mean huge things for the momentum.
How's he supposed to? How do you view?
I think it's one of those things that I don't want to put an exact number, but people have to be able to feel the relief. It can't be one of those things of, we say we relieve some, but really when you're looking at your monthly payment, can you actually see a difference? Does it make a difference in your everyday life? Is somebody, because of that relief, able to get a house now that they couldn't get before? Are they able to sleep a little bit more at night because now they don't have to worry about stretching bills a little bit further? Student loan relief is something that we've needed to do for a long while. It's something that he said he was going to do. And so I think that's the last big thing of you need to deliver on that the way you said, and you need to deliver in a big way.
So where do you put what he said? Now, I've had a bunch of people who are all over the map on this. Some people are saying 10,000 in forgiveness. I've heard people say 50,000. I've even had people tell me that they believe he said total forgiveness for everybody. I've never heard that.
I've never heard total forgiveness, but in everything that I've heard, you were talking about making a sizable impact. And again, it's hard to quantify what you feel like is sizable from a national perspective. But again, I think it's one of those things is across the board, when you look at how many people have large student loans, is that felt economically nationally with the reduction that you made? To me, that's much more than just $10,000. I think, you don't want to say that's nothing, but for the relief that people need to feel from it, and that I think a lot of people expected when he was talking about it and campaigning about it, it's much more than just $10,000.
Yeah, see, this is one of those moments where I'm in the student loan fairness and justice camp. I want to do the right thing, but to go, okay, we're going to wipe everything away and then continue with the system that we have so that my kids' generation, when they go to college, we're right back where we started from in 10 years. If we don't figure out how to fix this system systematically, the whole thing top to bottom, just saying, okay, you guys are forgiven, you're the winners now. Maybe somebody will help you down the road, the next generation. I got a problem with that. So I think there's a bunch of things we should be doing. I think we should be buying up all the student loans and people should pay them back at 0% interest. That's a start. I think we should bring bankruptcy back for the non-federal loans, so that if people can't pay them, they can go through the bankruptcy process. That's something, and I think it's something that a lot of people should agree on. But something's got to be done all across the board to lower the cost of college for the next generation too, or just forgiving some people. I don't know that that's helpful.
Well, Rick, to go back to what you were talking about earlier, you got to start somewhere. And so I think with that reduction in the immediate, you have the hope that if you're able to reduce and people see that impact, that we are going to start to be more proactive and actually addressing the problem that we have with education. I think a lot of people would love to see a cap on tuition prices and not seeing college continue to go up. When you look at now, what a bachelor degree was for my parents. That's what having a master's degree for me is the equivalent of at this time. So definitely there is a lot more that has to be done, but you have to start somewhere. And I think this is a very good start to get us going towards the right direction.
I'm hopeful something will come out of it. So last question I've got for you. What races should we be paying attention to? Any shockers coming up in November? If we like to look at this as a sport, as a game, kind of if you're handicapping it, what's the sleeper?
So what I want to say is two things. One, I think you have to focus on Georgia. The fact that we got a chance to fully flip Georgia blue. I know a lot of people said in 2020 it went blue. That's only one half, especially when you see what's happening in voter suppression coming out of the governor's office. So to see a flip there, I know it's not the common sleeper, but I think it is a monumental thing to get Georgia fully over that hump. And then I'm going to point at a couple of House races that I think people aren't paying attention to that can make a huge impact, whether or not Democrats take the House. Look at Ohio 13. You have the minority leader in Amelia Sykes, the former Democratic minority leader running there. Great opportunity to flip that seat. And then look at Arizona 1 with Jevin Hodge. I think those are two key races that probably aren't your most sexiest race, but those are going to be two of the races that I think make a difference on whether or not Democrats can actually keep the House or we lose it by a slim margin.
We're going to have to reach out to those candidates and see if we can get them on the program and see if we can help them out, because now they're on my map now.
Perfect.
But Chris, I appreciate you taking time for us. Hope you enjoy your time here at Netroots. I look forward to talking to you again.
Rick, thanks so much for having me.
Good stuff. Chris Scott, Chief Political Officer for Democracy for America. DemocracyForAmerica.com, their website, so you can check out the work that they do. Quick break, right back here from Netroots in Pittsburgh.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1949. That was the day that is remembered as Kemi Bloody Thursday in Finland. 2 strikers were killed. Kemi is a lumber town in northern Finland. The lumber workers in the area went out on strike when the government proposed slashing their wages by more than 30%. The strike was soon joined by sawmill and dock workers. The walkout caused a massive logjam on the Kemijoki River. On the fateful day, 3,000 strikers engaged in a peaceful march. They encountered armed police and a confrontation ensued. Police had guns on their side. The workers only had sticks and stones. One striker was shot and killed. Another was hit by a truck. Finnish army troops were called into Kemi. 32 strike leaders were arrested. In response to the violence, sympathy strikes were called by other unions, including the Seamen's Union. These strikes were seen by many as a fight between the Finnish elected government and communists in the nation's trade unions. Officials in the United States worried the strikes were an attempt by the communists to open the door to intervention in Finland by the Soviet Union. After World War II, Cold War politics shaped responses to labor struggles in many nations. A song, Fly Black-Winged Bird, remembers the fallen workers. The lyrics, translated into English, began, Fly, black-winged bird, with blood on your feathers across the lands. From village to village, carry your message. Open up autumn sky for the sad news to spread. Shame on a country where an unarmed man gets shot. Shame on the one who calls the shots.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So tomorrow on the program, looking forward to Chris Small coming through. Amazon Labor Union. You know, as we talked about yesterday on the program, you've got some organizing going on in Amazon facilities across the country. You know, the one in Albany just filed for a petition. You had the folks out in San Bernardino doing the walkout. You heard the interview with Sarah Fee. You can check that out on the podcast. We've got that out for folks to take a look at. And I'm looking forward to tomorrow, especially because, you know, we're going to have Chris Smalls coming through. Also, some of the Starbucks workers we're working with to get some folks to come in and share some thoughts on the organizing campaigns that are happening. And there also, Sarah Nelson's going to swing by. Because, you know, in this, you can feel the labor undertones here. Everyone here, you know, talks about, hey, you know, the economic justice part of all of the progressive agenda. Because as I've been saying for years, it all comes back down to the kitchen table. All comes down to the economics. Can you make lives better? Can you organize workplaces to ensure that the wealth that your labor creates is well compensated? Can you do that? And, you know, in most of the conversations with the people that, you know, are doing all the work here, there's that one common thread. That one common thread that a lot of them came out of the labor movement. A lot of them came out of labor organizing. Came out of campaigns that were focused on labor. So for me, you know, I'm looking forward to sitting down with Chris again, you know, who we've had on the program a number of times over the last couple of years to talk about the challenges there. Because as we've been pointing out, corporate America is not going to go quietly into that good night. They're not going to give up easily. They are fighting at every front. And, you know, as we talked about the other day, Starbucks is saying, oh, please, NLRB, can you stop these elections from happening? Because, well, you're being mean to us. That's basically the argument. The argument is that the NLRB is doing their job by promoting workers to join and form unions, which is their job, by the way. It is the government's job because that is the law. This is the weird part of this, and this is where, you know, you look at this Starbucks argument, you know, which is, hey, that's not how it's always been. You always used to let us get away with union busting. You used to let us get away with, you know, firing people and intimidating people. Why can't we do that anymore? And with this new general counsel, she's kind of taking a different approach and saying, look, that, you know, it is the responsibility, it is the job of the National Labor Relations Board to encourage workers to join and form unions for the sole purpose of collective bargaining, to make lives better, to demand better wages, hours, conditions, much like we talked about with Sarah Fee. You know, and this is one of those things that, you know, the conditions part. You know, when I was talking with Sarah, you know, she kept bringing up, you know, the working conditions. You know, going into some of these trailers out in California in the summer heat. You know, sometimes, you know, 120 degrees. Sweltering, the kind of heat that makes you nauseous and want to pass out. And demanding that, hey, you know, maybe you install fans. Maybe you do something to help protect us. You know, the people that you say are valuable, maybe the people who are making your wealth, people who are creating this you know, multi-billion-dollar juggernaut. protect us. And as I've said a million times, they're not going to do it voluntarily. This idea of corporate America self-policing themselves is ridiculous. And it's been ridiculous from the beginning. They're only going to do what they have to do. And it's our responsibility to make sure that what they have to do is protect workers in the workplace. What they have to do is ensure that they pay people reasonable, livable wages. And I know. Well, what about? No, what about? The what about is if you come in, you do what's expected of you. You punch that clock, you work those 40 hours, you do the job. You should be able to at least put a roof over your head. Now, nobody's talking about being able to live in the Golden Palace. Nobody's talking about being able to afford the fees of a golf membership at one of the Trump palaces. Nobody's talking about that. But to live a basic existence in this country, your labor should be able to afford that with whatever you do. So for me, the conversations around that is what we have to be focused on. And holding these employers and these wealthy people accountable. And as we've talked about a number of times, I think the Inflation Reduction Act going to help a little bit, ensuring that corporate America, that the wealthy pay at least a minimum. I mean, how bad is it that we're talking about a 15% minimum? I mean, let that sink in for a minute. Let that sink in at just how ridiculous that is. Such a pathetically small amount, and the lobbyists were losing their mind. But looking forward to talking with Chris and what's going on with Amazon, because at the end of the day, while there's a lot of organizing going on, it's going to come down to can they get a contract? Can they get that across the line? And can you build the kind of worker power that's going to demand, even if they don't get a contract, the kind of worker power that's going to demand those wages, hours, conditions, that kind of worker power that's going to, as the workers did in San Bernardino, say, you know what? It's too hot. We're walking out. We're not putting up with this. I think that's a greater fear. And I think if we get to that point, to where more workers are willing to do that, you're going to see corporate America begging for people to unionize. You're going to see corporate America going, no, please, oh, by the way, please. But we're not there yet. Not there yet. So I'm excited for those conversations to happen with the good folks of the Amazon Labor Union, also at Starbucks. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Any questions, comments, by all means, make sure you give us a yell. Going to take a quick break right back here from Pittsburgh at Net Roots Nation. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
The Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
The bill I'm about to sign is not just about today, it's about tomorrow. It's about delivering progress and prosperity to American families.
Inflation Reduction Act's landmark climate action is now the law of the land, as
the worst drought in 1,200 years, as water managers in 7 states, 30 tribal nations, and Mexico fighting over every precious drop.
Western states hit with unprecedented water cuts, and
science and the data leads us to now understand that we will lose 10% of our water supply by 2040.
California proposes big changes amid historic drought.
All of that history and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment. Today, courtesy of climate and energy journalist David Roberts, who tweeted recently, quote, "Every few minutes I repeat to myself in a quiet voice, it's okay. Joe Manchin can't hurt you anymore." No, he can't, David. It's okay. This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen, very big news. We've been talking about it for weeks, months. actually years, but
Yes.
the U.S. has finally passed and signed a major climate bill.
Yes, President Biden signed the Democrats' landmark climate, healthcare, and tax reform bill into law on Tuesday, with the largest single investment in climate action in U.S. history. $370 billion in investments to speed up the transition to clean energy and tackle climate change.
Now, we should note $370 billion is a lot of money, but it is spread over 10 years, and really, we need to do a lot more.
Oh, yes, it is most definitely not enough. In remarks at the signing, Biden drew a sharp contrast between Democrats and Republicans.
And remember, every single Republican, every single one, voted against tackling the climate crisis, against lowering our energy costs, against creating good-paying jobs.
Not only did every Republican vote no, but on the House floor, several Republicans called climate science a hoax, even as Americans are suffering amid one of the hottest summers in U.S. history. Last month set a new record for the hottest overnight temperatures on average, which are linked to an increase in heat deaths. And a new survey finds nearly 40% of U.S. farmers are plowing under their own crops and selling off cattle because of extreme drought. The bill also contains $5 billion in new funding for drought mitigation in southwestern states. Federal water managers this week announced a new round of mandatory water cuts for the 7 states that rely on the Colorado River because water levels are plummeting due to the historic mega drought in the U.S. West. The urgent action protects 2 major dams from structural damage after states failed to reach an agreement among themselves. Starting in January, Arizona will lose 1/5 of its river allocation. Nevada, 8%. Mexico, 7%. California won't see cuts until the next phase of the drought response. The feds will implement other actions to shore up supplies in the new system while a new agreement is negotiated.
So this agreement has been in place for years, but this is the first time it's actually had to be triggered?
Yes. Arizona and Nevada water agencies are not happy about the cuts, and they are demanding that other states, California, do more to preserve the river.
Hey, it's our water. We got there first.
Speaking of falling water levels, a 5th set of human remains has been found in the rapidly declining Lake Mead Reservoir near Las Vegas.
A 5th set of remains?
Yes, even while Vegas is experiencing its wettest monsoon season in years that is flooding streets and casinos.
So that ought to fill up Lake Mead a little bit, no?
Not even close.
Oh.
In California, Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom has proposed sweeping new measures to increase the state's water supply amid the mega drought.
We're going to steal more water from the Colorado?
The $8 billion plan calls for upgrading the state's entire water system to increase efficiency with new infrastructure for water storage and stormwater capture, groundwater management, increased recycling and reuse, and desalination plants.
There's plenty of water that flows through that just flows right out, that we can reuse, that is high quality, safe, and affordable. And so it's, again, about just being a little bit more resourceful and provide us more capacity to balance the needs as an ag state so that we're not going at each other, urban versus ag.
I don't know. Dick Cheney said you can't conserve your way out of a crisis.
Finally, some great news. In Massachusetts, Republican Governor Charlie Baker signed a sweeping climate and energy bill into law with major provisions to boost offshore wind energy, decarbonize Boston's transit system, allow cities to ban fossil fuel appliances in new buildings, and require all new cars sold in Massachusetts to be zero emissions by 2035.
Well, that's that. I guess Charlie Baker is going to have to be thrown out of the Republican Party. For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Welcome back to Netroots Nation here in Pittsburgh. really enjoying the time here, running into some old friends, and one person I haven't seen in a very long time. I grabbed here in the hall and decided, hey, we got to sit down and talk and catch up. Alex Lawson, he is the executive director of Social Security Works, the folks who do the defense of Social Security and Medicare. They do fabulous work. Alex, great seeing you again, man.
It's good to see you too.
It's great to be back out in public, and you get to run into so many people I haven't seen. So it's really good to see you, and good to see you back out doing here. I want to talk here. Good stuff.
Yeah. I agree that being back at Netroots Nation is it's good. It's really.
I keep coming back to that. It's good.
It's good, and I think people understand it, but like a lot of the stuff that happens is just sort of random, right? Like you run into people that you haven't seen, and we're all fighting this same fight, or the people that you run into and want to spend time with. And there's some really great work that comes out of that. And now is a great time with the passage of Inflation Reduction Act, and there's so much more to do. There's so much that we didn't get done, but we did get a lot done. And how we're going to take that into November, because we're up against, this arsonist party of who luckily are, I think, punching themselves in the face a little bit with being honest about their plans on, say, destroying Social Security, for example. Ron Johnson in Wisconsin, that guy in Arizona running against Mark Kelly. And I think that plus, I will just say, the solidarity of being among so many people, remembering that there's so many people in this fight.
Yeah, it's easy to kind of, especially during the pandemic, to feel you're alone in all of this. A lot of the contact I've gotten from people, hey, thank goodness you're here. You give me hope and, inspiration, and I'm not alone in this. And you come into an environment like this, and you're reminded you're not alone in this.
Exactly. And as a communicator, I'm often saying, you gotta get organized. You gotta stand with your neighbors and allies and feel that power to start really understanding and believing the truth that all power does come from the people, and that united we are unstoppable. And that, organized money in Wall Street, what they want to do is isolate us. They want to section us off into different silos, just working our own little thing. They get scared is when we all realize it's one fight, right? It's one fight against the billionaire class. It's got lots of heads, but the same evil people who are profiting off of destroying the earth and the extractive industries are the same Wall Street private equity people who are involved in having our drug prices be the highest in the world. And so a win on Medicare negotiation is a win for the movement.
I was going to say, interesting you brought up, drug prices, given the fact that in this Inflation Reduction Act, big deal.
It is a big deal.
Again, a big victory. I know a lot of people, not enough, we should have done more. Big victory, take the win. But negotiating for drug prices in Medicare, huge win.
Huge win. And I'm a huge policy nerd who's been working on this for over 13 years now. And I just want to spend a second so Medicare negotiation, I think people understand. Like, we've been getting ripped off, right? Like,
we haven't been ripped off. We're Americans, Alex. We pay full price.
We've been getting ripped off. The size of the ripoff is so astronomical that when we just get a little less ripped off, we can actually pay for enormous amounts of things with it, right? Like, that's what I want everyone to understand. But the legal concept is what I want people to understand, the win. It's in the law now, Rick. It says maximum fair price. The entire basis of the pharmaceutical industry's arguments, all of their legal arguments, is we're coming in and saying, you're killing people with your high prices on insulin. People are literally dying. And in the courts, what pharma says is the government does not have the expertise to know what is a fair price or what is a reasonable price. And now we're saying, yes, it does. It's right there. It says find the maximum fair price and then negotiate using that. And there are limits. right? So we didn't win because pharma spent $100 million. So we didn't win everything we wanted. It says, only on a certain number of drugs, 10 in the first year, right? Well, guess what? In the first year, I'm going to be the one who's like, I'm not paying them more than the maximum fair price. Oh, my drug's not included? Well, it should be. If you can find a maximum fair price on a drug, you can find the maximum fair price on all drugs. And so our track is also laid, and that's what I think is so important. We have the legal tool now, and which is the maximum fair price. We actually got even more than that. The fact that they can't raise the price faster than the rate of inflation. That was a Ron Wyden special, and it's really powerful. But now we know what our work is. No one in this country should be paying more than the fair price, right? Like, it's not okay to be getting kind of ripped off. If we can stop getting ripped off, then that's what we're going to do. And I mean that in all senses, organizing, but also legal challenges. Again, I know your audience is into wonky details, but reel me back in if you need to. There's one coming up in particular called, it's a prostate cancer drug called Xtandi. And this, it was paid for by the DOD. So U.S. taxpayers developed this drug. It's one of the only instances where pharma did not do they usually lie really well to hide up the public funding, but they didn't in this case. It's totally funded by taxpayers. A Japanese company owns the patent now, and they charge 4 to 6 times more in the U.S. than they do in Japan.
Right.
And you're talking tens of thousands of dollars for this. And this is a drug that is primarily at a person's end of life. And so it's really about giving people quality of life as they are facing death. And this company sees that as
an opportunity to cash in.
As
and
much
what
as
could
possible.
be more American than that?
And so this particular one, we have a mechanism that Biden can use. So not legislative, not through Congress. Cinema doesn't get a say on this. The president can use a power called march-in rights, which says that if the government has paid for the development of something and it is not being priced on reasonable terms, then the government can use its march-in rights. And guess what the drug companies, what Astralis would tell us is, you don't know what a reasonable price is. The government doesn't have the expertise. And now I'm like, ha, we do. We have the expertise. It's laid out in law. And we just said we're going to use it here. So President Biden, Secretary of HHS Becerra, we need you to do this. Take this executive action now. And we're going to do that on Xtandi. We're going to do it on insulin immediately. And, I've said in a bunch of interviews that, this isn't a win as much as it is a starter pistol, right? Like it is a huge win, but I'm going to be working way harder after than I did to get here.
Right, because you're going to have to hold them accountable. But what do you say to the other side who goes, well, now you've just destroyed the drug industry and they're not going to be able to create these drugs. We're going to all die because you want fair prices.
So there's a few things there. One is that's an industry talking point that's just has zero truth to it. What happens now is that the taxpayer, the American taxpayer, we fund the research and development of all the drugs. All of the drugs are funded by taxpayers.
Right.
And I'm going to use a really specific example just so people really get the ripoff. The Moderna vaccine, right? We all call it the Moderna vaccine. I took the Moderna vaccine. Great stuff. I love science.
I got 2 of them.
It's amazing. Right, exactly. Do you know what percentage of the research and development of the Moderna vaccine Moderna paid?
I would guess 0.
0%.
Because we spent a whole bunch of money.
It was 100% of it. We had to force, a public citizen actually did this amazing job of forcing Moderna to admit that they, and to put it in their filings, that they spent 0% of the research and development of the Moderna vaccine. I got fact-checked on that one. I think you'll appreciate this. By USA Today, I made a meme, and it said, they paid USA Today put out a fact check because, they're close to industry or whatever, the corporate media, and they said, oh, that's not true because these universities spent money on it. And I'm like, that's not how drug development works, man. We pay the universities to do the research.
Right.
That's how it works. So I had to fight with them for a while, and they were totally wrong, but to save face, they actually were like, well, you said taxpayers paid 100%, and Dolly Parton actually donated $1 million to the development of it. And I'm like, that is the lamest excuse I've ever heard corporate media. But even then, she's a taxpayer, so it's still 100% taxpayer money. But then what we do is so dumb. We just give the patent to this company.
Yep.
And we say, do whatever you want with it. So, there's a few things. I know for a fact that you don't need a company. They say that they bring it to market, right? Like that they can actually do the last mile. I know there are other methods of getting that.
Sure.
But even if you were to allow that they're the only ones that can do that, right? Or that they're good at it, put some restrictions on it, right? Like, we develop the drugs, and then we get charged the highest prices in the world. Why? Because we're the only country that lets them do that. We're the only country that lets them charge whatever they want.
Because they spend a lot of money buying the best democracy they can get.
$100 million, Rick, 1,500 lawyers just to kill the IRA, 1,500 lobbyists just to kill the IRA, to make it as weak as possible and kill it. And I want to tell you, we beat them. I want people to feel that. We beat them. Yeah, we didn't win the whole thing, but win in life, have you win the whole thing, right? One and done, it's not how it is in life. But we beat them. The unbeatable pharma is beaten. And you know what I love about that? There's the possibility of a virtuous cycle with politicians, because you know who loves lower drug prices? Everybody.
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 There you go. You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Alex Lawson. Alex is the executive director of Social Security Works. You want to check out the work that they do, socialsecurityworks.org. We'll get links out on social media how you can check out the work that they do. Want to change topics just a little bit. Still Social Security, Medicare related. I'm looking at Rick Scott. I'm looking at some of the folks on the Republican side with these great ideas. Rick Scott's got an 11-point plan. Basically, eliminate everything, and every 5 years, maybe out of the goodness of their heart, they're going to, bring them back. What does that mean for Social Security? Because I was talking to a grandmother the other day, and I said, you do realize that this is what they want to do. They want to eliminate this. And she could not believe that Republicans wanted to destroy Social Security. Couldn't believe it. I go, it's in writing.
I know but the amazing thing is you don't even have to listen to me or you on that. You can listen to Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell is the one who said, I don't want Rick Scott's plan to sunset Social Security and Medicare to be what the Republicans are known for in November. And so we're like, thank you for giving us the exact thing that we're going to say, because Mitch McConnell knows that is their plan. He's not pissed about the plan. He's pissed about Rick Scott saying what their plan is. The Republicans have, for a long time, understood. It's not a long time. I mean, it was 2006 when W tried to privatize Social Security, and the Democrats beat him so badly on it that the Republicans realized they had to lie about their plans for Social Security. I'm missing his name. I'll think of it in a second. But the former president of AFSCME, he had this great line during the privatization fight where he said... Jerry McEntee, thank you.
Who just passed recently.
Just passed, yes.
Sadly.
And he had this great line that I bet you remember, where he went on TV and he offered W. Bush money to keep his tour selling their privatization plan going. He said that AFSCME would pay for it to just keep him going around the country talking about his plan to hand our Social Security over to Wall Street, because every time George W. Bush opened his mouth about that, voters fled. And that is what I'm hoping that we can accomplish. But what you just said with the person you were talking to, that is what we're up against. People just don't believe that the Republican plan is as bad as it is.
No, and I say this all the time. Republicans hate working people. And here's, 10 reasons and 10 policies. This is what they've done. But I give people, no, I don't believe that. But here's the proof. Right. Here's the writing. It's right here. Read it. No, we don't do that.
I know, and you know what? I don't remember who said this one, but like always sympathy for the conned and none for the con men, right? And so I get it because there's so much propaganda out there. And corporate media, as you well know, do not allow us to tell the truth. That's why shows like yours and truth tellers, who we're sitting with like some of the best around here, it's incredibly important. It's the only avenue that many people have to actually understand what's going on. Like, you can't find that on the corporate news. You think that the corporate news is going to tell you the truth about pharmaceutical industry?
No, they're funding
That's who's funding them.
Yes.
Look at the commercials. That's who the news work for, is who's ever running those commercials. Yep. And so I just would say, like, what we need to do is use every avenue that we have, every channel that we can, to communicate directly to the people about the stakes. And here are the stakes. I got to testify in front of the Senate Budget Committee on this, and Senator Sanders, Chairman Sanders set it up, and it was just on Republicans want to cut your Social Security and Democrats want to expand your Social Security. And we just went through and listed all the plans. And that's what we have to do. We have to get that out there. We have to get it out there that every single Republican voted with pharma to keep you paying the highest drug prices in the world forever. Every single Republican voted to allow corporations to pay nothing in taxes as long as they have really good tax lawyers that can hide their money in offshore accounts. And as you know, that just destroys American manufacturing as well, because the tax setup before the IRA really benefited people who don't make stuff in America, people who make stuff elsewhere and then can use financial wizardry to not pay taxes on that. So I am I'm really proud of the Inflation Reduction Act, including all the scars I have from the fights to make it better. But I know for a fact that we fought as hard as we could, and we got a lot of good stuff in there. Nope. And every single Republican, they fought against it, and we need people to understand they fought for the special interests, and the Democrats fought for the people.
That's the best way of putting it. I couldn't do it any better myself. So last question I got for you. You here at Netroots, you've been to these before. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's great. It's I'd say that this is it's all over the country now, all over the world. I think, there's the pandemic still around, right? But we are remembering the importance of community. Maybe remembering to hate Zoom a little bit as well. Like, yeah, it was useful, but it does not take the place of the power of people getting together. And if we are going to beat, there's like 2,000 something billionaires in the world, and there are so few of them. We have all of the people.
Yeah, we outprocreated them. They've got all the money. We've outprocreated them.
And we've got the people. And it's wonderful to be at Netroots to be reminded of that, of being with the people, fighting for the people. And, yeah, like your show, it's wonderful to be back talking with you, Rick.
You got to come back again sooner.
Absolutely.
Good seeing you again, Alex.
Good seeing you.
Thanks so much. Alex Lawson, Executive Director of Social Security Works. Make sure you check out their website, socialsecurityworks.org. We'll take a quick break here from Pittsburgh at Netroots Nation. Back after this.
Rick Smith Show, where working people come to talk.
Are you tired of think tank approved corporate news and commentary? Are you tired of CEOs telling you what to think, who to hate, and who to vote for? Well, welcome to the Rick Smith Show. We don't take orders from some boardroom, and we don't do focus groups or talking points. We don't work for them, and we never will. I'm Rick Smith, and I work for you. Join us daily at thericksmithshow.com and download the podcast and never miss a minute.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So I got to tell you, I thought that was going to go. Differently. I really thought he was going to argue and complain about, what a horrible job Joe Biden has been doing, and surprisingly, he came out and said, look, Biden's been killing it lately, like we've been saying here on the program. And look, DFA, I think they do great work. I think they've done good work over the years. Howard Dean, if you remember, going back that far, that's Howard Dean's group. They've been around for quite some time. I was expecting some greater criticism, because that's kind of what they were pushing. But, credit where credit is due. Looking at what the administration has been winning on, even they are saying, look, take the win. Move it forward. Keep organizing. And it's about elections. I'm going to keep an eye on the elections that he threw out there as ideas for sleepers. Because, in talking with him, I keep thinking that Democrats are going to expand their lead in the Senate, but they're unfortunately going to lose the House, and I'm concerned about that. But as Mr. Scott said, the possibility of holding on to the House, if you can grab some of those seats that people aren't paying attention to, that where the enthusiasm is there, where especially now with the abortion issue that has kind of thrown this whole election cycle into different worlds of possibilities. And I know here, at this convention, the abortion issue front and center. A number of groups pushing that, organizing around the fact that you have a political party in this country who's saying, no, women, sorry, gals, you don't get to be in charge of your own reproductive rights. Sorry, we seem to know better than you. Electorally, I'm not sure how this is going to play out. Will we see across the nation what happened in Kansas? Will we see massive blowout? I'm hoping, because there's so much more that needs to be done. So much more legislatively that we need to accomplish to invest in the future, to leave something here better for our children and future generations. The world of possibilities, just endless. And like I said, the thought of getting more accomplished in the next year and a half makes me very, very happy. Love to hear your thoughts. Email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Back after this.
Waving the flag of freedom for people, not corporations. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1902. That was the day more than 100 trade union delegates representing thousands of working people in St. Paul, Minnesota, elected Charles James to be the president of the city's Trades and Labor Assembly. Virtually forgotten by history, James is considered to be the first African-American elected to a city labor council anywhere in America. He was born in 1866 in St. Paul and began working as a leather cutter for local shoe manufacturers at age 15. This was at a time when most African Americans were excluded from skilled trades. His biographer, Dave Riley, asserts that it is unclear when James became involved in union politics and organizing. Shoemaking was the largest mass production industry in St. Paul, employing thousands. Riley notes that the Knights of Labor had been active in the city during the 1880s, and shoe workers were among the first to organize. By 1899, James had become the first president of a newly formed shoeworkers union in Minneapolis and helped to found 3 more locals in St. Paul. By 1902, James was well known and well respected throughout the Twin Cities as a strong union leader. He served 3 terms as president of the Trades Assembly and then as secretary for 7 more years. Riley states that James continued as a full-time organizer and district business agent, traveling to cities across the Midwest to organize shoe workers. When he died in 1923, the Boot and Shoe Workers Union eulogized him in their national journal. Though James had been obscured from local labor history for decades, Riley and others have worked to write Charles James back into the history books.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com.
Senator Joe Manchin, a one-man political steamroller in Washington, is a Democrat, except when he's not, which is most of the time. A multimillionaire West Virginia coal executive, he's the darling of fossil fuel and pipeline lobbyists and beloved by Republican opponents of progressive Democratic policies. Indeed, he's funded by Republican billionaires. But Washington lobbyists and billionaires are not the only source of personal political power that allows him to hold office and block little d Democratic policies that the American majority wants and needs. Back home, Joe has maintained tight authoritarian grip on West Virginia's Democratic Party structure, rigging the rules to put little Joes in each and every party position. In turn, this has long given Boss Manchin control over who gets to run as Democrats for down-ballot elected offices in the Mountain State. Until June 18, that is. That's when a statewide Democratic rebellion that had been organizing for 6 years elected its slate of over 50 candidates to oust the Manchinites on the party executive committee, replacing all but one of the top party officials with grassroots activists. It truly was a diverse, people-run victory. Selena Vickers, a social worker, was chief strategist, and Mike Pushkin, a cab driver, is now the party chair. Danielle Walker, now vice chair of the committee and the first person of color in state history to sit on the party's governing body, summed up the significance of this turnaround. There's a new beacon of light shining down on the government with people energized and ready to strategize with a return to the democratic process. This is Jim Hightower saying, to help bring this kind of progressive reform to your local or state Democratic Party, go to Our Revolution, the one national group working on this fundamental democratic change to the Democratic Party. OurRevolution.com.
Welcome back to The Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So back here at Netroots Nation, spent a little time in the exhibit hall. Tons of groups from around the country coming together to sell their wares and get people to volunteer, activist opportunities. Also, a lot of groups, doing work for campaigns, helping to organize. That's what I find really interesting. The new ways to organize. I'm really old school. You show up, you get to work. Seems simple to me, but everything today is with the smartphone. Everything today is remote. And there's a lot of interesting things out there, and here to share some thoughts on, maybe how we change things, how we do things a little differently. I've asked Samantha Bucher to come talk with us. She's the CEO and founder of Shire, their website, getshire.com. They are doing some of this, and I'm sure she's going to explain to me exactly what Get Shire is. Samantha, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, for sure. Always happy to talk to folks.
So, not a techie at all, not my world. What do you guys do?
Yeah, so of course, in the COVID pandemic era, a lot of companies, it's all the rage to go remote and have folks working from home and so on. But political tech really hasn't caught up with that trend, right? There's a lot of reasons people might want to work remotely, even volunteer remotely for campaigns or nonprofits. They may, like I do, have a health issue that makes it difficult for them to do in-person activities. Maybe they're vulnerable and compromised and can't be, or compromised immune systems and can't be, exposed to COVID and things like that. Or maybe they just have other accessibility issues, or they live, in the heart of Manhattan, or they live in deep red Wyoming, and they feel like if they do volunteer for a campaign that's right around the corner, that they're not actually really having an impact on anything meaningful to them, right? So at Shire, what we're building is first and foremost, the first digital office for political campaigns and organizations to let volunteers come and volunteer remotely. So if you're living on a ranch in Wyoming, or you're living in downtown Manhattan, or you're in a swing state but you have an accessibility issue, you can actually come in and use the tools that are already out there to make phone calls, send text messages, write postcards.
Don't they already do a lot of that stuff? I mean, I get calls from all over the country from people going, hey, we need you to vote for this person or that person or this issue. Is this all been done?
Oh, definitely, yeah, for sure. So the type of remote volunteering program that a lot of campaigns will put together is absolutely doing that, right? So they're taking folks from, no matter where they might be, and they're getting them together virtually, and they're having them use a bunch of different tools. There's lots of vendors here, as you said, selling those tools. But the problem is that those the fundamental glue that holds all of that stuff together is usually corporate communications platforms like Slack, things that are really great for business, but they cost $8 a head if you're going to use them for like a professional purpose, right? And so, back in the 2020 campaign, one of my favorite examples of this is the Bernie Sanders campaign had a really strong, really robust digital virtual organizing program. They had 72,000 volunteers in that program. And they had to use a free version of Slack that had very limited features for their volunteers and organizers to chat with each other, because it would have cost them $500,000 a month just for that application alone. Wow. Right? And that's also a tool that's built for business purposes, right? It's got a learning curve. It takes time to get to know. It can be really overwhelming to people that are not as tech savvy.
Yeah, it would make me not want to volunteer.
Exactly. And so if you're let's say, if you're a college student, you can make these things like, do backflips, right? But if you're maybe you're a retiree and you want to get involved in civics, but you have a bad hip, or you don't have a car, or any number of reasons, right? It's really hard for those folks to get involved in campaigns and actually do meaningful, make meaningful contributions in their minds. So they don't really have that opportunity to build that community. So it's about providing that. Shire is going to provide that digital office space to replicate the experience of when you walk in the door of a campaign office. There's an eager guy with a clipboard right there that's like, hey, welcome. Like, let's be friends.
Go do something.
Yeah, go make this phone call. Here's a list, right? And right now, if you sign up for a campaign to try to volunteer remotely, the experience is more like, oh, I hit a brick. I submitted a form. Now what, right? Oh, okay. Now they're going to send me an email. I have to install all of these tools. I have to do all of this extra stuff. Maybe they install Slack, or they get on a Zoom call and they get overwhelmed very quickly by just the learning curve of going from, so even if they make it in, right, they still have to get past that learning curve. So,
and also part of this, and I don't know if this is what you do, but part of the volunteering process and part of working on campaigns and all this is the social part of it.
Yes.
It's one thing to, okay, I'm going to make some phone calls and you're isolated in your home.
Yeah.
That's one thing, but it's also something to be part of, a part of something.
Yeah, and that's why physical campaign offices have always, been the way of things, right? Because you want that community around that local area, for example. But so a few years ago, the Corporation for National Community Service, they're the government agency that runs like AmeriCorps and a bunch of other government-backed volunteering programs, right? They did some research, and they found that the three main reasons that volunteers leave organizations, the top three reasons are: one, they felt underutilized, right? And this doesn't not just campaigns, right? But nonprofits too, right? They feel like they weren't actually doing anything useful, so underutilized. The second one is the environment doesn't support their efforts, so they feel like even though they have a mission or a purpose, they don't have the tools that they need to get the job done, or the tools are not easy for them to use, right? And the third one is a sense of feeling like the work was impersonal or cold, or they didn't have that sense of community, right? Those are the three main reasons that volunteers leave organizations. And in my opinion, as someone who's managed a U.S. Senate race and 8 congressional races. I think that we, as the left, are nailing all 3 of those right now. We are in a bad way. Like we are not supporting.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
You mean nailing in a bad way?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're doing great at doing badly. At
Okay,
those
I just
3
want to make
things,
sure
yeah.
that you're on the because I'm going. We're nailing. I got to argue with it because there's a lot of deficiency, I think, here.
Oh, no, that's exactly
what
what I'm
I think
saying,
the right does this so much better.
Well,
their digital operations, I think, are so much farther down the road.
Well, but you know why that is in my
they got
opinion,
a lot of money.
It's not only that; it's because the platforms that people are using, like social media platforms, especially Facebook, all that is a giant hole you throw money in, and if you got more money, you got more views, you got more interactivity, you got more clicks. And the thing is that Facebook is used by everybody. Maybe not some of the younger generations these days, but if you're, my grandmother in her late 70s is on Facebook constantly, and so a lot of the tools that we have at our disposal in campaigns and even in nonprofits and orgs are designed for a 35-year-old person who's working in business, right? It's meant to, it's going to have a learning curve, but that's part of your job, right? If you're a volunteer, you don't really have the same level of necessarily incentive to stick with it and figure it out, especially if you haven't exposed to that before. So
You're listening to the Rick Smith Show here with Samantha Booker. She's the CEO and founder of Shire. GetShire.com, the website, if you want to check out the work that they do. So who's your target audience here? Who are you going for? Are you going for volunteers? Are you going for campaigns?
Yeah.
Where's the focus of what you do and all of that?
So from a volunteer's perspective, we want. So I mean, our focus is everything is volunteer centric, right? We want to make sure that the experience of the volunteers is as compelling as possible, because what that does is that actually gives campaigns benefit too. I mean, I think we're missing out on. There's 2 levers a campaign can pull. It's either volunteer hours or it's money, right? And if you're missing out on 60-70% of your potential volunteers and a huge pool of people from all around the country that might want to come and help John Fetterman, for example, right, in a swing state, then if Dr. Oz has more money, then he's going to win because you haven't been able to pull that lever. So it's all about making sure that volunteer experience is good and making sure that organizers are actually focused on doing what they're good at, which is building teams, building community, building relationships with volunteers, instead of just being glorified tech support people that are having to give classes on how to use the tools that you're using for those campaigns.
So if one of our listeners goes to getshire.com, what are they going to find?
Yeah, so we're launching our very first version in September. So for campaign organizers, or if you work at a nonprofit or a small advocacy organization, what you can do is sign up to get on our wait list, and we'll reach out to you with some information about how to get Shire for your organization. But if you're just a regular not involved in that sort of scene, we're actually doing something that most companies don't do, and that is crowdfunding. So campaigns and PACs do this all the time. There is a big hubbub about the role of private equity in campaigns right now, and I could go on about that for ages. But really, we want to make sure that that it's the workers, that it's the people that are actually building this tool that own it, and not some big private equity firm that's going to come in and tell us the right way to live, right? Yeah. So if you want to support us, we have a crowdfunding equity campaign right now. The minimum investment's only $100, so anybody can get in there and become a part of this as a member of that and actually own a piece of Shire.
There you go.
Until
Good
September
stuff.
15th.
GetShire.com, the website. Samantha Booker, I appreciate you taking some time for us.
Yeah, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Good stuff. Thanks so much. I'm going to take a quick break. Back here from Netroots Nation. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1927. That was the day that a new radio station began to broadcast on the New York dial. The station's call letters were WEVD. It stood for Eugene V. Debs. The radio station was founded to honor the recently deceased socialist and labor leader. Its goal was to provide a forum to discuss the causes Debs had fought a lifetime for. Progressive labor leaders were involved in the project. The International Lady Garment Workers Union donated space for the studio. Sidney Hillman of the Amalgamated Clothing Workers served on the board. So did A. Philip Randolph of the Brotherhood of Sleeping Car Porters. The station's programming included a show called The Pullman Porter's Hour. It also ran a popular Yiddish language program, The Forward Hour, named after a Yiddish newspaper of the same name. The station provided space for liberal and labor voices that was not available on the commercial radio dial. In 1928, the station had to stave off the Federal Radio Commission to avoid being shut down. The FRC wanted to close down multiple small stations it argued were clogging the airwaves. In 1932, the Forward took over operation of the station. In 2003, the station was bought by ESPN, and its call letters were changed. The radio remains an important forum for the U.S. labor movement. When mainstream media often ignores important labor news, the radio is a place to hear in-depth coverage of issues impacting working people. This includes the friendly voice of labor history in 2 at The Rick Smith Show. So, the next time you're driving somewhere, spin the dial and see if you can find the voices of labor. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as we wrap up show number 1 from here at Netroots Nation, interesting day so far. It's always difficult to come back after a long time away and shake the rust off, and it's always good to meet some new friends and catch up with some old folks. And here to share some thoughts on day 1, I've asked our good friend, the Professor Brett Pransky, to come sit down and share some thoughts on his first Netroots. Brett, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, happy to be here.
So, thoughts on the first day, the day of Netroots Nation?
Well, there's just so much information to be found here if you're looking for it. There's so many things going on that you couldn't possibly touch them all. A lot of great people, a lot of great conversations. It has been a little bit strange, just the idea of kind of getting back into these, large environments with a lot of people around. You really do see just how much the pandemic has changed how we operate in public space.
Yeah, I'm not sure I like the brave new world, but it's going to take some adjusting to, and a lot of talk about tech, a lot of talk about moving things virtual and digital, and not so much.
Yeah, I would have to agree there. I mean, it's been wonderful to have these things available, especially in a time like the pandemic, where so many of us were forced indoors and forced away from some of the kind of face-to-face contact that we were used to. But one thing that has really been driven home by my time here, that just this first day, is that there's really no replacement for getting in the room with like-minded people. As much as having these facilities available and having this technology available is wonderful as a stopgap, there's just no replacing that idea of having like-minded people in the same space to share their thoughts and ideas.
Yeah, I mean, this is an incredible facility. I love coming here, and I love coming to these events. And you're right, it's that kind of, I don't know how to explain it, but it's that thing of being in a room full of other people and the ideas that get thrown around. That the creativity, I think, is a positive.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, my first real experience with the difference between events like this and doing things more distance related was in the classroom. It was when I was forced into a virtual classroom, when I was accustomed to being in front of students and giving lectures and being able to respond to a look or a head nod or something like that in real time. And as much as you can sort of replicate that in online space, it's never going to be the same. It's not going to be the same thing. So, and I got that feeling again today, being here in the building. There are a lot of people who I met today, was able to share space with today, who I've known for years. But they were always the voice on the phone, or the image in a Zoom chat, or something of that nature. And here, I actually get to meet these people and share space with them, and it's just different. It's fantastic.
Yeah, and the other cool part about it is the same thing. You meet people, virtually, you email back and forth 1,000 times, and you feel like you know these people until you actually meet them. And look, a couple of people who listen to the show, who listen to the podcast, came up. Oh, hey, glad to see you. Thanks, you're great. All that stuff,
Right.
which is wonderful for the ego. Don't necessarily need it, and always makes me feel weird. But it's that kind of stuff that you're actually reaching and touching people.
Yeah, well, shows like this are a labor of love. I mean, there's something you do because you're dedicated to the art of doing it, that you really want to be involved and do good things and push the needle in the right direction. And I could come up with some other cliches too, but the idea is you're in it because you love it, because you enjoy it. And when you can come to a place like this and get that kind of face-to-face contact with people who appreciate what you do, and they can tell you that in real time, face-to-face, it's fantastic.
Now, seriously, out of this, hopefully a new Rolodex of guests for the future. I know there were a lot of people here that we've had on a number of times over the years, and we're going to start getting them back. Alex Lawson being one of them. Any groups that you found particularly interesting that you ran into while we were here?
Well, I'm a big fan of the Courier Newsroom folks. I think they're doing great work, and again, that's why I write for them from time to time as well. But I think they're really impressive. They're doing good things for democracy by kind of localizing some of these issues and bringing them down to the state level, which I really think is important when you consider the fact that so many local newsrooms have disappeared over the past several years. But then again, it's kind of a who's who of impressive folks around here today. There have been a lot of groups who are just doing fantastic work. I saw the folks from the Brady campaign are here and doing great work on common sense gun reform, and just every single table that you visit, every single exhibit that you see has someone whose goal is to change the world in a positive way. It's just uplifting through and through.
Yeah, I took the kids through and I got lost for like an hour.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those things you go, hour? Didn't mean that.
Yeah.
But again, there are a number of groups that we're going to be focusing on. One of my favorite ones, the Groundwork Collaborative, who we've had on the program. I think they do terrific economic work, and talking about inflation, and talking about how screwed up our tax code is, and where my wheelhouse is. But there was a lot of other things here that I think are just as important.
Yeah, I mean, there really are. And one of the things I really enjoyed is being here on Radio Row. Being here and talking to the other folks who do this work specifically, and talking about the issues that we have and the issues that they have, and what we did to solve this problem, what they did to solve that problem, and connecting people with potential guests and people who could help them do what they do, and kind of help keep these voices alive and active, and hopefully stronger and louder in the future than they are today. It's been another thing. It's been a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, and the kids got a whole bunch of toys, like little boxing gloves on keychains. I often wonder, I love this stuff, but you go, yeah, could we? I don't know.
Yeah, there's a lot of gear floating around. There's a lot of toys. There's a lot of T-shirts. There's a lot of tote bags. There's a lot of literature. Some of it very, very good. So there's a lot to do. There's a lot to see, and there's certainly a lot to touch.
Yeah, so if folks still want to check it out, netrootsnation.com, the website, or .org, the website, I think you can still sign up to watch it virtually and participate that way if you can't get to Pittsburgh. First time to Pittsburgh, I understand for you. Thoughts of the Steel City, the Three Rivers, all that?
Well, actually, Pittsburgh, while I have never been here, has a history for my family. So it's one of the things that I'm taking is the fact that when my family first came here, straight off the boat, they came to Pittsburgh for the steel jobs. So my family, well, I've never been to Pittsburgh. The roots of my family are in this place. So I guess it's sort of like home, or at least it's a home I would like to know a little more about.
See, I grew up in Cleveland, and I'm still struggling to like Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
Yeah, because as you know, there's a visceral thing. Just is what it is.
Not lifelong Browns fan. I know exactly what you're talking about.
So what are we anticipating for the next couple of days? They got some big keynotes coming up. I know our friend Sarah Nelson's going to be here for tomorrow. On Saturday, you'll have Randy Weingarten coming through. What are we expecting over the next couple of days?
Well, I expect to be throwing a lasso around as many of those people as I can, and and getting them in here on the show so that they can come talk to folks, and and so that we can help them get their voices out there, and help advocate for the things that they care about. But it's going to be a great event. There's going to be a lot of really interesting folks here with a lot of really cool things to say, and a lot of great issues to talk about. And I just I can't wait.
Yeah. So the big thing tomorrow, Friday, obviously going to be a potential Nazi rally.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Ron DeSantis is coming to town to do a rally for Doug Mastriano, or as you like to call him, Benito Mastriano, which I think is fitting. But it turns out they're not only going to be in the city, they're going to be in this building with us, which should be rather interesting. I don't know exactly where they're going to be or what part of the building they're going to be in, but I imagine we'll probably find out one way or another.
So are you going? This is one of those things that I'm going, I want to go, but there's part of me goes, if nobody shows up, I don't want to be the guy in the photo that goes, see, there was somebody there, and it ended up being me.
Right. I might take a look at it from far. Let's put it this way. I don't have plans to go, but I brought a little bail money just in case.
That is the right response. But it's curious to me why they would choose this location on that day, this particular. It just seems curious to me.
Yeah, it is a little curious, and I don't know exactly why they would choose this venue on that day, or and who knows, maybe they are looking to to be disruptive in some way, and that's fine. If that's what they choose to do, I wouldn't advise it. You know what I mean? But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. But all in all, day one, very positive. And as I said, earlier, for me, what I found most encouraging, you didn't hear much. I didn't hear any talk of the former guy. There was nothing about the raid on the Golden Palace. There was nothing on the looking to the past. Everything is looking forward and moving in a direction that is about making positive change and changing lives. And to me, that's the really exciting part of this.
Yeah, it really is, especially when you look at some of the amazing things that have been happening, legislatively in the past couple of months. I mean, we have just been, really pushing through some serious legislation that's going to do serious things. That's really going to help American families, which is the goal. So one side is gonna shout a whole lot and cause a whole lot of trouble, and we're just gonna keep our nose down and do the work.
Yeah, just like the Biden administration. Like I've been saying, Trump was all words and no action. Biden's been all action, no words, and I'll take the action anytime. But Brett, I appreciate the time, and I look forward to your wrap-up tomorrow as day two concludes tomorrow, but I appreciate it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Tell us what you think of the coverage thus far and what you think of Netroots Nation. Love to hear it. If you miss any of the program, make sure you grab the podcast. Always there, always available. Share with your friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you back here next time.